Tonight, my father-in-law showed me that I can never trust him to be alone with my future kids. Dear husband, and I have a new puppy that is 10 weeks old. Father-in-law came to visit alone, and the first thing he does is take pictures of the puppy for mother-in-law, before even saying hello to me. Next, he ridiculed me for always Googling everything when I mentioned that I researched puppy training before getting one. His exact words were that in the past, they just did whatever seemed like it would work, and if the puppy or kids died, then they died. He specifically included kids in the sentence. He also kept picking the puppy up by his scruff even though the puppy yelped in pain every time. Apparently, the dog is just overly sensitive, and should just get over it. Mildly annoying. But he mentioned that it was impossible to overfeed a dog because they will stop eating if they're full. Then mentioned that he had a maid that looked after his dogs, so how would he know if he never even fed his own dogs? Tonight, he proved that he won't listen to anything I say in regards to baby care. He will ridicule any mention of the latest research, and if things go wrong I would have to just get over it because that was how things were done before the internet. He officially lost any right to ever look after any kids I might have. Starting last night, I went no contact with future father-in-law. The reason for this is that for years, he just questioned every decision I made for my daughter, told me how I should parent or how it should be, which is frustrating. I went no contact, and told him that until he can respect me as my daughter's mom, he is on timeout. Of course, he went to fiancé explaining how the world is just against him, and gave false information about what happened. I messaged future father-in-law again, and said, "This is about how you treat me. You're not banned, but until you can say, you're the mom, and what you say goes, to everything I decide, I will say, you won't be seeing our daughter. Until then, I demand respect and I will get it. She came out of my body, not yours." All he said back was okay. There's a part of me that just feels kind of bad because of the weird and uncomfortable position I put fiancé in, but then I remember I didn't put him in that position. His dad put us in that position. You can't treat me like I'm not a mother, and expect full benefits of our daughter. My fiancé agrees that I deserve respect, and to be taken seriously as our daughter's mother. I do everything for our daughter. I am a damn good mother. She is not neglected in any way, and for people to act like I am neglecting her, just because they don't agree or like what I decide, is not going to fly. He doesn't even see it. When I said he couldn't see her, he said, "What did I do to her that is causing this?" What? Did it not click that maybe he's doing stuff to me? I don't know. I feel better after standing up for myself. Trigger warning: inappropriate sexual behavior. My mom split up with my lovable dad about 5 years ago. Basically, mom is physically disabled, which has made her quite bitter, and she left my dad for a guy she met in the pub, who is also disabled, because she felt he'd give her more attention. Note: my dad did everything for her, which she now acknowledges as she doesn't have anywhere near the support she used to. But that's another story. Anyways, divorce went through. Mom married her toxic partner, who I loathe to call stepdad, a few years ago. I'll refer to my toxic stepdad as Mike. Mike is not a nice guy. Oh, he will come across as some harmless, older disabled guy, the type of pub regular that seems kind of a drunk, but harmless. People learn quickly that he is not. First, he brags about being on benefits while having savings and property that would exempt him from being eligible if he declared them. But he likes that he is cheating the system. I would report him, but if he goes down, my mom will go down with him. Next, he stirs up trouble so people argue, then sits back and watches the fallout of his handiwork. Problem is, he's not bright, and his stirring backfires on him, and people get mad with him most of the time. He then just plays the poor, disabled victim card. Next, he makes disgusting comments about other women, in front of my mother. For example, during summer, a girl in her late teens was petting a dog, and the way she was bending down meant you could see down her dress, and she wasn't wearing a bra. This was done totally accidentally on her part, but Mike was literally drooling, and turned to us, and started coming out with stuff like, "Look at that. She wants me to look at her tits, she does," in a really weird tone of voice. Mom just sort of giggled, and ignored it, but I was grossed out. This is not unusual behavior. He was also warned by police after a neighbor made a complaint that he was masturbating in his bedroom with the curtains wide open so everyone could see him. I know the neighbor, and there is no way she was making it up. He claimed that he is always fully clothed in his bedroom, and can't close his bedroom curtains as it makes him claustrophobic. With no proof, he wasn't charged with anything. Next, he's racist, and homophobic, and regularly rants about both subjects. He is forever coming out with off-color jokes about both subjects. My mom has made me promise not to mention I'm pansexual, and have had relationships with other women before I met my dear husband. I just grit my teeth, and try and change the subject when he starts. Last, his personal hygiene is disgusting. He wears the same outfit for days, even weeks, and smells like it. He doesn't bathe or shower. Oddly enough though, their flat is spotless. I had to stay with him last year when my mom was ill as he can't care for her the way she needs. As I say, she now realizes how much my dad actually did for her. He wanted me to watch a movie called Nude Nuns with Big Guns with him, and thought it was hilarious when I became uncomfortable. Mom made him turn it off. I know now that it's not a porno, just a really dodgy grindhouse type movie, but still, I was sleeping in their living room, so I made sure I barricaded myself in when they'd gone to bed. I love my mom, and want a relationship with her, so I tolerate Mike for her sake, as she really seems to love him. No idea why, as she doesn't act like him at all, but she believes everything he tells her, and will totally ignore his gross behavior, to the point that she will cry and claim you are being mean if you mention anything about him she doesn't want to acknowledge. He goes to the pub twice a day, so we try and time our visits so he's out when we call, but it doesn't always work out that way. We live about 90 minutes away, so we don't see them too often, and I talk to mom on the phone more often. Thing is, I am 15 weeks pregnant, and my mom is so excited that she's going to be a grandma, and I want my baby to know her, but I don't want him anywhere near my child. Especially if it's a girl. My dear husband feels the same. He gets on well with my mom, but loathes Mike as he seems to think dear husband being a fellow male means dear husband totally agrees with everything he says. There already is no way our baby will be left unsupervised with him, or mom. I would love to know what to do about this. My boyfriend and I have been together 2 years. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder and social anxiety from an abusive childhood. I met my boyfriend online, so it's a long-distance relationship and we still don't live together. He lives with his sister and his dad, and I'll come to visit every now and then. I prefer to be at my home because it's my comfort zone, and I don't have to see his dad. I don't know why, but my social anxiety is awful around my boyfriend's dad. In 2 years I've not had a proper conversation with him. My anxiety is absolutely crippling around him. His dad seems very rude and blunt. I just cannot relax around this sort of person. I'm quiet and sensitive. I have heard this man call his daughter, who has had an eating disorder in the past, a fat slob. He has had several girlfriends in the past and apparently he hasn't treated them brilliantly. He has commented on their bodies, telling them they've put on weight. Once I was in the car with him and he made a comment about women drivers. I don't want to say he's 100% bad. One time I was round my boyfriend's while he was at work and his dad told me to help myself to breakfast, which was kind of my thought. Every time my boyfriend cooks I hide in his room. I feel so guilty about it, but my anxiety is crippling. His dad has asked why we don't cook together and says it's weird. Usually if I'm at my home we cook together. It's just when my boyfriend's dad is around I'm terrified about maybe having to interact with him, so I avoid it. Recently his dad has apparently expressed interest in getting to know me. I'm not sure what to do. I rarely come to his house anymore, but I'm here now for a special occasion. Should I make more effort or should I continue to avoid my boyfriend's dad? I feel rude hiding in my boyfriend's room. It's his dad's house after all. Surely I should be polite and sociable? Angus is my toxic dad. He was physically and emotionally abusive behind closed doors, but liked to play the role of cool fun dad in public. Unfortunately, my sis got in touch with him, who previously targeted her, and tried to groom her in some way. After 15 years of no contact, she immediately let herself be manipulated by him, is now blaming my mom for his abuse and lack of interest in her, and is telling me I deserve to hear his side of things. I don't want Angus back in my life as I don't trust him, but don't want to lose my relationship with my sister. Toxic people never really go away forever, do they? It had been so long. I thought we were safe, and that was all in the past, and I only occasionally even thought about it all anymore. I thought he was out of our lives for good, and while I didn't want anything bad to happen to him, and wanted him to be off living a happy life, I didn't want him back in mine. I will never be able to trust Angus. I still remember cowering in fear, and my knees knocking together when I was shaking because of one of his rages. Recently, my lovable sister got married, and moved out. At some point, I'm not sure when, she decided to get back in touch with Angus, which, she's an adult, and she has a right to contact whoever she wants. But as soon as she did, she sends my mom a nasty text saying that my mom had supposedly lied about Angus's abuse, and forced us to tell the court psychologists we didn't want to see him, that he had always loved and wanted her, and my mom was just a swine who'd kept them apart. This is the same Angus who used to get my sister alone as a toddler, and groom her into thinking me and my mom didn't love her, and that she had to be on Angus's team against us. The same Angus who used to slap lovable sister around the face for doing normal kid things, like talking a bit too loudly, or wanting to sit next to our mom in a cafe. The same Angus who would use trying to see us as a threat to my mom whenever something was going well in her life, but didn't actually want to see us when it came down to it because we tried going through the courts, and had the paperwork ready for supervised visits in an access center. As soon as he realized it would be supervised, and wouldn't go his way, he gave up on it, but not before he'd rung my mom a few times to scream, "You freaking swine," into the phone multiple times, something so loud we could hear. Understandably, my mom is devastated, as she worked so hard to keep us safe, and was always there for us over the years, made sure we were provided for even when money was tight because Angus wanted us out on the streets for not bending to his will. And I can't believe that lovable sister was so gullible as to talk to him once, and immediately believe his manipulations again. What he's told her doesn't even make sense. If my mom made us say things about him to the court psychologists, then why do I remember when I was only 10 at the time what he did, and remember wanting to get my side out because I was petrified at the thought of seeing him? I remember my sister saying things of her own accord too, and of crying about the things she was scared of. We were not told what to say. If my mom was the only reason he didn't contact us, why wasn't he reaching out the second we turned 18? I have heard of other toxic people do it. For example, I think there was even a recent one where the toxic mother-in-law reached out to the grandson when he was 18 after failing to get GPR a couple of times when he was a kid. Angus, however, just wasn't interested, and it seems to me he's only interested because he's found a way to get some power over my family again. I obviously don't know everything he's said, but it seems pretty obvious he hasn't apologized for what he did to lovable sister as a kid, because he's immediately dumped blame onto my mom, and lovable sister has taken the bait, and ran with it. My mom even asked her, when lovable sister was shouting at her over the phone, why didn't Angus go to court then? He would have got visits. Lovable sister hesitated, and then just said, "Oh, I'm not discussing this with you." Sounds like she didn't know. Because he hasn't given her concrete reasons. Just told her what she wants to hear. I have read the text she sent my mom. It's full of repetitions of "he does love me, he does want me." It sounds like a child desperate for approval, and it makes me wonder if a part of her always held on to being desperate for Angus's approval. Then lovable sister texted me, saying she really wants to talk to me, there are things I deserve to know, and she wants me to just listen to her side of it. That there's someone who loves me very much, even if I can't believe it. I haven't replied because I don't know what to say, but I know I will have to soon, because she'll have seen the read receipt. I can't just ignore it. But I don't want Angus back in my life, even by proxy. I remember what he did to me. I remember him chasing me down the hall to slap me repeatedly because I asked if he'd seen my hairbrush, and then found it next to him. I remember being pinned to the fly screen outside while he screamed in my face, something my grandpa thankfully saw because he came back to the house early, and he still remembers it. I've read the court papers, because when I became an adult my mom said I could if I wanted to. I've read the emails from his second ex-wife, whole different story. She reached out to my mom at one point, and basically said Angus was abusing her too. I don't even want to hear whatever self-serving story Angus has cooked up. I know it won't come with an apology, just rug sweeping, and shifting all the blame to my poor mom who did nothing but protect us. But I'm not angry with my sister, and I don't want to lose a relationship with her. I want to let her know that. And I want to warn her to be careful, and use her judgment, because I'm worried it won't be long before he starts abusing her again. Because he could never hold in that rage for long, no matter how hard he tries to do the fun dad act. I'm angry, and upset, but at the situation, not at her, because I think she's been manipulated badly, and even after years those buttons he installed are still there, and all he had to do was push. But I don't want my life to have Angus in it. I thought I was safe from him. Nearly no contact with toxic father, and am I the asshole for keeping some contact? Trigger warning, child abuse mentioned. It seems insane to me that I'm in any kind of contact with this man. I honestly don't know what's wrong with me sometimes, though. I have an appointment with a counselor who specializes in sexual assault trauma. I figured for years that something happened to me as a child, because why else would I have blocked out nearly everything before age 11 when my parents divorced? I wondered sometimes about whether this or that relative had hurt me, but eventually kind of figured it was the trauma of a bad marriage and divorce. I guess when I block something, I do a good job of it. In February 2015, my father, a deeply religious man for the last 35 years, attempted suicide. This was a deep, dark secret from the rest of the family, although my formerly toxic stepmother did call and let me know, which I appreciated. Of course he was admitted, and I soon went to visit him. I got there before she did during the visiting hours. I sat down with him, and within a few minutes, he confessed, and begged me to forgive him. I was frozen, truly stunned, but at the same time, It was like tumblers in a lock clicking into place, and suddenly every crazy, horrible thing I'd done in my life made perfect sense. He was crying, genuinely, I believe, and I blurted out, "I forgive you." Then the details came out, which my stepmother arrived in the middle of. She was shocked, but clearly she had known something before, just obviously not the extent of it. That was a shock too, but it clicked. After I went home I stayed in the shower for over an hour, crying. Those deep, body-shaking sobs, you've all been there, I'm sure. Eventually my dear husband came in, and asked me what was wrong. I couldn't speak, my throat was so tight. Finally he stripped, and got in the shower with me, and held me until I was cried out. I got a few words out then, and it was like his entire body just went solid, completely locked up. He didn't say anything, but I know he wanted to kill him. And that was okay with me because just then, so did I. This is the second time that dear husband will be walking with me through the aftermath of rape. He, too, has been through quite enough. So the next couple of months I tried to deal with this, and while I contacted my stepmother a couple of times, I didn't contact my father directly. Then things started to hit the fan in my own life, and I didn't have time to try to cope with my father. I was in very little contact with stepmother, who eventually started calling out to my dad to pick up an extension when I called. But honestly, I was just numb with other griefs at that point, so I didn't really feel much about it. But over the past several months, I've been having flashbacks, panic attacks, dissociative episodes, and major depression. I've been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, dissociative disorder, and a few other things. Here's the question of am I the asshole? Over the last several months, one of the biggest emotions I started to feel was rage. My God, these people set me up to fail in every possible way. I started to understand connections I had never seen before, between what he did, and my behavior as a young person. I'm 45 now. I started to think about all the people I had hurt along the way, and there were many. I'm not passing responsibility for my own actions onto him, but just the knowledge of how I'd been programmed from literal babyhood on by what this man did to me. It started on a low level literally the week they brought me home from the hospital. That was part of what he'd confessed to me, and over time, that I'll decide how to handle this later, thinking, since the statute of limitations had run out, and it became, I'm going to be nice to keep myself in his will. Because by God does that man owe me for what he did. He and stepmother are quite well off. I never felt entitled to a cent of their money, though he bailed me out of bad situations quite a lot when I was a young woman. I was thankful, not entitled. They earned it, I didn't. It was rightfully theirs, and if they had bought themselves a solid gold toilet, so what? They should spend their money as they pleased. But now, I feel like a seriously entitled swine. He put me through hell, then sat back, and watched for years while I made my own hell, and took it out on other people. And damn it, now I want to get paid for that. I know that's awful, I really do, but just currently it's how I feel, and I don't know what to do with it. And then part of me feels like if that's how it plays out, I'll feel like I've been paid for services rendered. And that's a horrible thought, too, selling my pain and trauma. Any advice is welcome. Thank you for your patience. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.